Chapter 1884. Chu Luiyue swung her sword a second time without any hesitation. The sword chimed and shook the heavens and the earth. The terrifying sword energy tore the sky apart and slashed down. Rumble. Following a loud crash, the mountain next to it was slashed apart once again. The originally steep and precipitous mountain peak was neatly cut open from the top of the mountain, leaving behind a huge crack. Boom. Then, another ball of blue flames burst out from the crack and soared into the sky. Nan Yuxing's pupils shrank. He had a bad feeling. In the distance, Mo Lin and the others were even more shocked. How could this be? How could this be? Wasn't it said that only the bottom of Langfeng Peak had amazing opportunities? But now, why were there flames bursting out from the bottom of the surrounding mountains? Chu Luiyue had only swung her sword twice, but she had already split open 2 mountains and ignited 2 balls of flames. Every swing of her sword was accurate. Mo Lin's heart was filled with fear. He had already vaguely realized that Chu Luiyue had indeed come prepared. Or rather, she had done it on purpose. What was she going to do? Split open all the mountains and ignite all the flames below. Mo Lin's mind was in a mess when he thought of the scene where something flew onto her shield from the flames. He stared at the figure and felt that it was familiar. Suddenly, he opened his eyes wide. Could it be that she was the one who followed Sanson to Langfeng Peak that day? Otherwise, how could she ignite the flames on Langfeng Peak so easily? There were even other things below the mountains. It must be her. It must be her. At this moment, Mo Lin finally understood. From the beginning to the end, these flames were closely related to Chu Luiyue. If it's really as I thought, then the thing buried under Lan Qingfeng would have long been taken by Chu Luiyue as her own. Mo Lin broke out in cold sweat when this thought appeared in his mind. You guys stay here and guard. I'll personally invite the vice faction leader. As he spoke, he was about to turn around when he suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air from afar. Everyone looked over and was immediately shocked. Because it was a group of people. To be more precise, it was a chaotic battle between several parties. Mo Yun was also among them. Mo Lin was just about to step forward when he suddenly realized that those people who were fighting were rather unfamiliar, but their strengths were extremely formidable. Third boss is here too. Someone exclaimed. Mo Lin looked over and frowned. Not only was Sanson here, but she was also standing opposite Mo Lin. At this moment, she was fighting with full vigor. From the looks of it, they seemed to be stopping Mo Yun's group from coming over. On the other side, there seemed to be an unfamiliar god expert working together with Mo Yun. The scene was extremely chaotic. Mo Lin and the others were completely dumbfounded. What was going on? They had only been guarding this place for 2 days. How could so many things have happened? Rong Xiu waved his sleeves, and a faint golden barrier blocked Mo Yun and the others outside. Sensing the astonishing pressure surging from above, Mo Yun was shocked and angry. This Rong Xiu was too difficult to deal with, and that Sun Yi, his strength was also far beyond their imagination. Mo Yun's gaze turned, looking past Rong Xiu and the others to Lan Qingfeng, who was behind them. His heart sank the moment he saw what was in front of him. The fire on Lan Qingfeng had indeed started burning. The key point was that other than Lan Qingfeng, there were also blue flames burning crazily on the 2 mountains beside it. From the looks of it, it was obvious that someone had forcefully split open the mountain rocks and drawn it out from below. Mo Yun's gaze finally landed on the slender figure standing on the mountain peak. She stood against the wind, holding a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right hand. Her eyes were tightly shut, and no one knew what she was doing. In front of her, a deep ravine extended, and the blazing flames were jumping around like fairies. At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through Mo Yun's mind. However, before he could think clearly, he saw something suddenly flying out from the flames, heading straight for Chu Luiyue. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes and raised the black shield in her hand. Buzz! That ray of light landed on the shield, and there was a ripple of light. However, in just an instant, that ray of light quickly disappeared. It was as if it had been swallowed by the black shield, but it was as if nothing had happened. How could it be that nothing had happened? Mo Yun's heart felt as if it was being squeezed by something. He was extremely smart. Based on what he had seen so far, it was enough to explain a lot of things. That day, the enchantment on Lan Qingfeng suddenly dissipated, and the flames gradually extinguished. It must be because of her. Then the thing below, probably. However, according to the information that he had gathered, it was clearly only the situation below Lan Qingfeng. Now, even the surrounding mountains were. A huge amount of information rushed in, causing Mo Yun's mind to go blank. At this moment, Chu Luiyue looked down at the shield in her hand. As expected, after the rust peeled off, it became heavier. The two hidden powers that were summoned by splitting open the two mountains had all merged into the black shield. The originally flat shield became more and more uneven. Complicated and mysterious patterns could be vaguely seen in the shallow depression. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked up. If she wanted the rust on the black shield to be completely peeled off, it would be an extremely torturous and long process. As the secret text on it gradually appeared, its weight and pressure continued to increase. She could still carry it now, but if this continued, she was not sure how long she could hold on. She pursed her lips and continued to head to the next mountain. Seeing Chu Luiyue running to the next mountain, Mo Yun's heart suddenly surged with a strong sense of uneasiness. He could almost predict what Chu Luiyue was going to do. The anger in his heart was surging, and it was about to rush out of his chest. Force surged in Mo Yun's palm, and then he quickly slammed his palm forward. Lingyun palm. A huge greenish-black palm print condensed in the void. Then, it began to quickly head toward the enchantment set up by Rong Xiu. The power of both sides began to silently kill, entangle, and devour. Ripples appeared on the surface of the barrier, but it did not shatter. It was extremely flexible. On the contrary, it was that palm print of Mo Yun that started to gradually weaken in the midst of the frenzied battle. Mo Yun was burning with anxiety as he watched. He was indeed not confident that he could win against Rong Xiu in a head-on battle. But time was of the essence. If he continued to let Chu Luiyue go on like this, the consequences would be unimaginable. Rong Xiu, do you know what she's doing? If the entire peach blossom dock is destroyed? Mo Yun shouted at the top of his lungs, and his face was ashen. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. As long as she wants to, let her be. It's just a peach blossom dock. If it's destroyed, I will take responsibility. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1885. His handsome face was calm and composed, as if he didn't take this matter to heart at all. Her eyes were filled with elegance, and one could see that she was indulging and doting on that person. It was as though even if she turned everything upside down, he would still spoil her. Mo Yun was so angry that he could not speak, his body trembling. These two people were too presumptuous. Rong Xiu, don't blame me for not reminding you. This is Peach Blossom Dock. If she did anything out of line, the entire Peach Blossom Dock would be buried with her. The surrounding void had already started to collapse uncontrollably. It was not that Mo Yun had not seen such a situation before, but he had never experienced such a serious situation before. Rong Xiu's brows raised slightly. I really can't tell that vice sect leader Mo actually has such a heart. In these 2 years, the number of people who died under your Ink Sword sect is not small, right? If vice sect leader Mo really cares about the world and cares about everyone, why not harm fewer people? I think it will be more effective this way. Mo Yun was speechless by Rong Xiu's words. Of course, he did not care about the life and death of the people in Peach Blossom Dock. He was only worried that Chu Luiyue would monopolize the things that they had been searching for so long. But of course, such a reason could not be said. Mo Yun could only be anxious. At the side, Luo Yan's expression was solemn as his mind raced. There was obviously another reason why Mo Yun was so worried. Could it be the flames on the mountain? He looked forward, and through the enchantment, he could only see Nan Yuxing's slightly hunched back. It seemed that he was injured. Luo Yan could not help but frown. Nan Yuxing was already a god expert. How could he not be able to defeat Chu Luiyue, who was a high god? Could it be that in this short period of time, Chu Luiyue's strength had increased again? Just as both sides were in a deadlock, another group of people rushed over from behind. This aura was somewhat familiar. Luo Yan's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly turned back to look, and was immediately delighted. The few people who had chased over were the Nan family who came with them. Behind them, there were also some people from the Black Sword sect. However, Luo Yan soon discovered that the number of people was wrong. Originally, there were 8 elders present. However, only 4 of them had come. Luo Yan's heart was filled with a strong sense of unease. He immediately stepped forward. Only when he got closer did he see that the bodies of these people were stained with messy bloodstains. It seemed like they had gone through a fierce battle. Why are there only 4 of you? Where are the rest? Luo Yan asked anxiously. The elders looked at each other with dejected expressions. Those people are all. Luo Yan's heart turned cold. The 4 who were still alive were all eminent gods. Even they were unable to save him. He couldn't help but say, how could this be? Judging from their strength, they are definitely not your match. The them he was referring to was naturally Sanson and the others. Previously, when he and Mo Yun chased after them, Rong Xiao and Sun Yi quickly caught up. As for the rest, they only came after a period of time. At that time, he thought that they had used some method to temporarily stop the people from the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. Who would have thought that it would take so many people's lives? One of the elders spoke with difficulty. Luo Yan, you don't know. The people from the Yu family have extremely powerful formations. If they were to fight individually, the people from the Yu family were indeed no match for several eminent gods. However, who knew that this group of people had already thought of a strategy from the beginning? When Rong Xiao and the others left, they didn't say anything and immediately set up a profound formation. That formation was very strange. They worked together with the people from the Black Sword sect to break it with great difficulty. However, they also paid a great price. The same went for the Black Sword sect. In fact, because they didn't have many eminent gods, their casualties were even more serious. In short, to them, it was indeed a bloody battle. However, the most hateful thing was that they were trapped in that formation. Sanson and the others who set up the formation only handed it over to the servants of the Yu family and then left directly. This was also why Sanson and the others had rushed over so much earlier than them. In other words, Sanson and the others had killed half of them without any effort. After Luo Yan heard this, he was shocked and angry. At the same time, there was a trace of uncontrollable deep fear. He couldn't help but turn back. At this moment, Sanson and the others were standing beside Sun Yi, looking obedient. Seeing the people who chased after them, Sanson couldn't help but click her tongue. Eminent gods are indeed different. They actually caught up so quickly? This sentence almost angered Luo Yan and the others half to death. Fast? How was it fast? Under the circumstances where so many people had died, they barely managed to rush out of the formation and catch up here. It could be said that it wasn't painful. Sanson's words were no different from sprinkling salt on their wounds. Luo Yan's chest rose and fell violently. However, at the same time, countless thoughts were surging in his heart. Looking at these people, they didn't even put them eminent gods in their eyes. Luo Yan wanted to curse, but the thick smell of blood around the people around him made it hard for him to breathe. Didn't they say that these people came from outside the divine ruins world? How could they be so powerful? Luo Yan couldn't figure it out. There was no need to talk about Rong Xiao. After all, he was an eminent god and was born as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. His bloodline talent was already famous for being powerful. But what about Chu Luiyue? Wasn't she just an eminent god? And these followers of hers? They actually possessed strength that far exceeded their own cultivation realm. Why were the people related to her so abnormal? On the other side, Mo Yun didn't care so much. Seeing that the people from Black Sword sect had caught up, he ordered without hesitation, "Everyone from Black Sword sect, listen up. Set up the formation." Yes, With Mo Yun's order, no one dared to disobey and immediately took action. There were about a dozen people from Black Sword sect chasing after them, but in Mo Yun's eyes, it was still not enough. Chu Luiwei could directly split the mountain and draw out the blue flames from the bottom of the mountain. This proved that her strength was definitely more shocking than the rumors. Mo Lin. Mo Yun looked up and shouted sternly. Mo Lin's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly replied, "Yes." Without Mo Yun's instructions, he knew what to do. "Everyone follow." Mo Lin raised his hand and immediately led the people behind him to charge towards Mo Yun and the others. Rong Xiu's barrier blocked them. Looking at the barrier that was suffused with a faint golden color, a trace of hesitation flashed across Mo Lin's face, but it disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, he directly drew his sword and drew a line on his palm. Blood splattered. Following that, a surge of force, mixed with blood, crazily surged out. Blood sacrifice array. Almost at the same time, the people behind him did the same. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1886. The thick stench of blood spread through the air. Several forces converged. Then, the sky suddenly darkened. Countless dark clouds converged from all directions. The sky, which was originally considered clear, suddenly turned gloomy. Strong winds blew, howling incessantly. Rumble. A huge sound exploded from behind the layers of clouds. Tonlei, like a silver snake, was faintly discernible as it slithered quickly. Rong Xiu raised his head to take a look, his phoenix eyes narrowing slightly. To be able to trigger Tianlei in such a short time, one could see how powerful it was. 13 suddenly thought of something, his eyes widening as he turned to look at Xin Yi. "Big brother, wasn't this aura almost exactly the same as the one he felt on the day of the soul-gazing tribulation?" Although he was busy breaking through back then, he still paid attention to the situation around him. On that day, aside from the numerous bolts of lightning that he had attracted, the people from the Black Sword sect had also attracted many bolts of lightning, causing a huge commotion. He vaguely felt that the Tianlei summoned by the two sides was somewhat different, but he didn't have time to distinguish what exactly was different. But now that he saw this scene again, he immediately recognized it. This was exactly the same as that day. A cold glint flashed across Xin Yi's indifferent and narrow eyes. He was also present that day, and as a bystander he saw it even more clearly. He glanced at 13 and shook his head lightly, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Ink Sword sect wanted to trigger Tianlei to attack Master. This killing intent was too strong, to the point that they didn't even bother to conceal it and directly attacked. At this moment, Mo Yun indeed couldn't care less. In the past 2 years, the Black Sword sect had held a test every month. Every time, they would specially choose a secluded place and ensure that no one was watching before they began. Now, in broad daylight, directly activating the blood sacrifice formation in front of so many pairs of eyes would definitely attract a lot of attention. But there was no other way. Seeing that Chu Luiwei was still planning to continue splitting the mountain, Mo Yun didn't dare to guarantee how the situation would develop if he allowed her to continue like this. So now he could only gamble. As long as Chu Luiwei was dealt with, the rest could be dealt with slowly. Thinking of this, Mo Yun did not hesitate to cut open his left palm. Blood flew out. A terrifying force surged out from his body. The people from the Ink Sword sect following behind him naturally attacked as well. On both sides of the golden barrier, countless blood-colored lights converged and intersected to form strange patterns. It was the image of the Black Sword sect's twin swords circling the moon. From afar, it looked like Rong Xiu's barrier had split the gigantic blood-colored pattern into two from the middle. The pincer attack from both sides caused the barrier to shake even more violently. Rumble. Finally, the first Tianlei came crashing down. Almost at the same time, the violently vibrating golden barrier suddenly shattered. Bang! For a moment, light scattered in all directions. Violent energy surged out in all directions. The blood-red patterns on both sides began to converge towards the center. At this moment, Chu Luiwei, who had just arrived at another mountain peak, also noticed the commotion. She raised her head and frowned slightly. A trace of impatience flashed across her eyes. There's really no end to this. Did the people from the Ink Sword sect finally react and intend to shed all pretense of cordiality with her? Shengguan Yu. Now, everyone wants your life. I'd like to see how long you can be so arrogant. Nan Yuxing raised his head and looked. When he realized that the reason why the Ink Sword sect had set up such a huge formation was to kill Chu Luiyue, he could not help but feel relieved. Chu Luiyue glanced at him. A loser like you still has the mood to be so arrogant? If I were you, I'd probably die of shame after losing to a cultivator who's one level lower than me. Nan Yuxing's face immediately turned red. Also, your Yuan meridian was severed previously. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for you to fully recover. But not only did you fully recover in such a short period of time, you even broke through to become a god. Nan Yuxing, have you never thought about how strange the situation is? Chu Liyue's question sounded like a joke to Nan Yuxing. I was able to recover because I'm lucky. And I have the help of an expert. Of course, a lowly person like you has no right to meet such an expert. You've never even heard of such an expert. Chu Luiyue curled the corner of her mouth. She did not take his derogatory words to heart. Indeed, I've never seen such an expert. But, as a celestial physician, I've heard of a method that can quickly turn a crippled person into a genius. Are you interested in hearing it? Originally, Nan Yuxing did not want to waste his breath on Chu Luiyue. However, the mysterious smile on her face made his heart tremble for some reason. Who wants to listen to your nonsense? He reprimanded coldly. Chu Luiyue was not bothered by his attitude. She raised her eyebrows and suddenly said, Nan Yuxing, I won't hide it from you. From the moment we exchanged blows, I felt that the aura on your body was very familiar. Nan Yuxing sneered. You and I have already met in the Divine Ruins world. Isn't it normal for you to feel familiar with my aura? Chu Luiyue smiled. Of course, I'm not talking about your aura when I say familiar. Nan Yuxing's heart skipped a beat. Chu Luiyue continued to ask. Nan Yuxing, don't you feel it at all? Your Yuan meridian is obviously very different from the Yuan meridian you used to have. I don't believe that you can't even notice this. Nan Yuxing's legs suddenly went soft. He took a step back uncontrollably. His face turned deathly pale. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Don't try to mislead me with your lies. Shengguan Yu. Am I trying to mislead you with my lies, or are you unwilling to face reality? I'm afraid no one knows better than you, right? Chu Luiyue interrupted him. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly pierced into his heart. If I remember correctly, although Nanyi's tongue was cut off, the Yuan meridian in her body is still intact. If you take it out and put it into another person's body, it won't be a waste. With every word Chu Luiyue said, Nan Yuxing's face turned paler. His lips trembled as he muttered to deny it. But in his heart, countless guesses surged uncontrollably. It wasn't that he didn't think about how he recovered his Yuan meridian. But his father only said that he asked an expert for help, so he firmly believed it. In fact, did he really not have any doubts in his heart? Of course he did. But that guess was too terrifying. He didn't dare to think that way at all. He only talked about how he wanted to take revenge for Nanyi, as if this was the only way to calm his restless heart a little. At this moment, Chu Liyue's words finally unveiled the last layer of veil. Nan Yuxing, is your younger sister's Yuan meridian convenient for you? Translator, Noodletown Translations Editor, Noodletown Translations. Chapter 1887. Chu Liyue's casual words were like a poisoned arrow that pierced into Nan Yuxing's heart. He staggered a few steps back and almost lost his balance. You're spouting nonsense. He reflexively shouted in a stern voice. What do you know? You don't know anything. What right do you have to spout nonsense? Because of his agitation, his voice was exceptionally hoarse and sharp. He stared at Chu Luiyue with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. There seemed to be flames burning in his eyes. It looked like he couldn't wait to kill Chu Luiwei on the spot and chew on his flesh and bones. Chu Luiwei raised the corner of his lips. However, there wasn't a hint of a smile on his face. There was only coldness in his eyes. I'm just asking you a question. I didn't say anything. If it's fake, why are you so agitated? Nan Yuxing, who killed your biological sister, Neni? Why don't you ask yourself or ask your good father? Nan Yuxing was about to break down. He wanted to ignore Chu Liyue's words. However, those words seemed to have gone crazy and kept reverberating in his mind. Countless questions surged in his mind at this moment. It wasn't that he didn't have doubts. However, how could he dare to ask? He didn't even dare to think about how he had recovered his Yuan meridian. Boom! Just as Nan Yuxing was in a daze, a blue flame suddenly transformed into a long whip under his body. It rushed up and tightly bound him. Nan Yuxing was shocked and subconsciously tried to break free. However, the flame suddenly exploded before he could break free. Boom! Boom! Instantly, countless sparks flew in all directions. Terrifying and scorching energy continuously bombarded Nan Yuxing's body. His figure was instantly surrounded by the exploding flames. First young master. Luo Yan and the others were shocked when they saw this scene. As they were still some distance away, they couldn't hear what Chu Luiwei and Nan Yuxing said. In their opinion, the two of them had only said a few words before Chu Luiwei attacked. This was considered a sneak attack. However, Nan Yuxing was a god. Logically speaking, he should have been able to dodge it. What happened to him just now? Quick! Save first young master. At the same time, he moved and rushed in Nan Yuxing's direction. The four elders behind him quickly followed behind him. However, before they could arrive, a bolt of lightning flashed in the sky and struck down. Its target was Chu Luiwei. Under the influence of Tianlei's power, Luo Yan and the others. When he saw the Tianlei's landing spot, he had a look of s. Nan Yuxing was just a short distance away from Chu Luiwei, so he would definitely suffer a huge impact if the lightning struck him. He suddenly turned his head and shouted at Mo Yun. Assistant sect leader Emma. My Nan family's young master is still there. How can you act so rashly? If such a bolt of heavenly thunder was added to the mix, the consequences would be unthinkable. When Mo Yun heard that, he frowned coldly. We want to kill Shangguan Yu. He insisted on going there. Who can he blame? Since he knew that he didn't have the ability, he should have left. Nan Yuxing had been chasing after Chu Luiwei for so long. Not only did he fail to stop her, he even allowed her to split the mountains. Mo Yun was very unhappy about this. He really looked down on this so-called young master of the Nan family. She looks like a god, but her actual combat strength can't even compare to Chu Luiwei, who is a high god. If he stayed there, he would only be a hindrance to everyone. Mo Yun was also in an extremely sensitive state. Naturally, he was not polite with his words. In fact, even if Nan Yuxing died because of this, he wouldn't care at all. When he said this, the faces of the elders of the Nan family all changed. Everyone agreed to form an alliance. How could you say something like this? What's the point of forming an alliance? Nan Yuxing was the first young master of the Nan family and the only successor of Nan Yifan. Previously, he was seriously injured and was almost crippled. Nan Yifan had spent a lot of effort to help him recover and break through to the god realm. If he died here today, Luo Yan and the rest wouldn't be able to explain themselves. Mo Yun, don't go overboard. We also want to kill Shangguan Yu. But if you continue to act like this, don't blame us for being impolite. Luo Yan also didn't want to fight with Mo Yun at this time. But the other party was really too much. Facing Luo Yan's threat, Mo Yun responded with a cold smile. He didn't even look over. In fact, when he was about to use the blood sacrifice array, he had already decided to bury everyone here together with him. What was a mere Nan Yuxing to him? This battle was very laughable in the eyes of Sanson and the rest. Today has really broadened my horizons. A second ago, they said that they wanted to work together. The next moment, they turned against each other and became enemies. How exciting! Wu Yao sighed from the bottom of his heart. Before they could make a move, Ma Jin sect and Nan family had already stood up. It was simply laughable. Sanson waved her hand disapprovingly. It's normal operation. Don't worry about it. These two families didn't have any good intentions. It was expected that things would turn out like this. Big brother, should we make a move? He looked at Sun Yi. Sun Yi pondered for a moment and looked at Rong Xiu. Does Her Highness think? Rong Xiu looked up and glanced at Chu Luiyue. His thin lips curved slightly. No hurry. She hasn't played enough. Let's wait a little longer and let her play to her heart's content. It won't be too late to make a move then. Digression, I'm going out today and I'm not sure when I'll be back. So, I'll make up for it tomorrow. Speaking of which, I swore that I wouldn't write on New Year's Eve, but it seems like I won't be able to do it. The list of activities will be posted in the comments section tonight. The prizes will be distributed after the new year. I'll wear a mask when I go out. Everyone, please be careful and have a safe and healthy new year. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1888. Sun Yi nodded. When the rest of the people heard this, they looked at each other and couldn't help but look at their own master. At this moment, she had already raised her sword again. Boom! Another dark blue flame gushed out from under the cracked mountain rocks. More and more flames appeared. Under the gloomy sky, they looked like balls of ghostly fire burning faintly, dyeing the dark and thick clouds with a faint blue color. The slender figure was extremely agile, shuttling through the undulating mountain range like a fairy. The flames seemed to be extremely obedient to her will as they danced. Master is really amazing. Yujio couldn't help but praise. Who knows how many people Ma Jin sect has sacrificed just for that azure peak. However, in front of Master, he didn't even put them in his eyes. From what I see, Master is really going to flip the entire peach blossom dock over. Master is naturally extraordinary when he makes a move. Wu Yao rubbed his chin and looked at the Tianlei that was still gathering in the sky. At first, he was still a little worried, but seeing that his big brother and the others didn't seem to care, his heart was basically settled. Shi Fang looked at them and then at the collapsing void. He rubbed his hands and muttered in a low voice. It's said that the void in Peach Blossom Dock is chaotic. It seems like it's true. It was just a fierce battle, but it had already caused the spatial energy here to become chaotic. Countless turbulent flows flowed out recklessly. If the situation continued to worsen, it wouldn't be good. From the corner of his eye, Shi Fang saw that 13's expression was very calm. He couldn't help but nudge him with his elbow and whisper, 13, aren't you worried? Worried about what? 13 looked at him in surprise. Shi Fang pursed his lips. This void. I'm afraid it's going to completely shatter. I know. 13 nodded calmly. Although his realm wasn't as high as his big brother and the others, he had followed them for many years and seen and heard a lot. Naturally, his vision was different. He also knew what this meant. Isn't Master and Big Brother here? 13 rolled his eyes and coughed. His Highness is also quite powerful. With so many people around, he felt that there was nothing to worry about. If you really don't have the confidence, why are you still staying here? According to Master's temperament, she wouldn't stay in an unsafe place for long. Shi Fang was taken aback. Then he thought about it carefully and felt that it made sense. That's true. No matter what, his master had been through hundreds of battles. It was impossible for him to not know the seriousness of the situation. In this situation, she still chose to stay here. This only proved that there was something more important to her here. Rumble. Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. He viciously hacked at Chu Luiyue. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue jumped onto Dumpling's back. Dumpling spread its wings and flew quickly to the next mountain peak. Huge flames burst out from the mountaintop behind them. From afar, it was as if a phoenix had been reborn from blood. Damn it! Mo Yun was furious. They had already used the blood sacrifice array without caring about anything, but they still couldn't do anything to Chu Luiyue. That crimson gold heavenly phoenix's speed was too fast. Continue. Mo Yun ordered. His voice was hoarse and almost hysterical. Chu Liwei had escaped from his hands time and time again, which had already made him extremely angry. He quickly circulated the force in his body and activated the blood sacrifice array. That huge blood-colored totem was like a sea of blood that stretched across the sky. The thick smell of blood quickly spread between heaven and earth. It was almost suffocating. The surging killing intent wantonly surged. Rumble. Low and heavy thunder rolled down from the clouds. It heavily smashed into everyone's ears. It shook everyone's heart. Several silver snake-like toy quickly gathered in the sky and immediately fell one after another. Rumble. A loud sound reverberated throughout the area. The wind was raging. The space was distorted even more. Chu Liwei quickly turned around to take a look. The pitch-black ink-like pressure reflected the dazzling fire. She gently patted Dumpling's head. Tuanzi got the hint and stopped quickly. At this moment, they had stopped at the top of a mountain. Those Tunlei arrived in an instant. The distance between the two sides was rapidly shortened. Chu Liwei raised her head slightly and moved her wrists. However, her feet didn't move. She only looked up at the Tianlei. Her black hair was already swept up by the wind, dancing in the air. Seeing this scene, almost everyone was shocked. Mo Yun frowned and couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "Is she crazy?" At this time, it was too late to escape, but she actually stopped just like that? Was she scared silly, or did she know that she couldn't escape, so she simply gave up? But no matter what the situation was, this action was no different from courting death. Mo Yun was stunned at first, then he sneered. Looks like she's really tired of living. Previously, he had thought that Chu Liwei would more or less try to avoid it. With the strength she had displayed previously, coupled with the help of Rong Xiu and the others, she might be able to hold on for a while. But now that she didn't want to live anymore, she couldn't blame others. Thinking of this, Mo Yun glanced at Rong Xiu and the others. A trace of suspicion flashed in his cold eyes. Chu Liwei was Rong Xiu's princess consort, and it was rumored that he doted on this princess consort a lot. In order to marry her smoothly, he didn't even hesitate to offend the Yuntian Tower's patriarch and the other respected elders. Logically speaking, he should be very worried when he saw Chu Liwei in danger. But at this moment, he didn't seem to be worried. And Sun Yi and the others beside him, she actually followed him and stood there without doing anything, not moving at all? Could it be that they had all become idiots as well? But such doubts and confusion only flashed through Mo Yun's mind. The deafening sound of the heavenly lightning striking down quickly snatched away his attention. He turned his head and focused his attention on Chu Liwei again. An incomparably bright and imposing Tunlei fell with a loud bang. It accurately landed on the mountain where Chu Liwei was. Crack! A huge crack appeared on the mountain. More than half of the mountain peak shook violently. At the same time, another cluster of blue flames quickly surged out from within. Lightning and fire merged, and the power of both sides fought fiercely. The figure that always stood as straight as a pine tree was also swallowed at this moment. The corners of Mo Yun's mouth lifted into a cold smile. The Tianlei triggered by the blood sacrifice array was extremely powerful. Even a venerable god expert had to be careful when dealing with it, let alone a venerable god like Chu Liwei. This time, she was definitely going to die. However, in the next moment, a figure suddenly rushed out from the flames. It went straight to the sky. Mo Yun's smile finally froze on his face. Digression, insomnia. Increasing the dosage of melatonin didn't have any effect. He barely fell asleep at around 4 in the morning and woke up at 7 in the morning. At this moment, he couldn't open his eyes and his mind was in a mess. I can't update on time today. I will try my best to finish the 6 chapters before 8 in the evening. Everyone, read it together later. Most importantly, I wish everyone a happy New Year's Eve. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1889. That dark blue fire surrounded Chu Liu's body. Not only did it not cause her any harm, but it even blocked most of the lightning's strength for her. She rushed out of the place where the flames intertwined without any harm. Then she quickly flew forward with Dumpling. Her speed was extremely fast. The violent energy surging around her couldn't even slow her down in the slightest. Mo Yun's expression was dull, as if he had been slapped a few times. His face was burning with pain. The flames on the mountain peak were so bright that it hurt their eyes and they could not look at it directly. Plus, Mo Yun was in a state of extreme shock, so he did not see that the black shield in Chu Liyue's hand flashed past. At this moment, his mind was completely blank. It was fine that the Tianlei did not hit Chu Liyue at the beginning. But that strike just now had truly struck her from the top of her head. Why was Chu Liyue still safe and sound? It was the flame. It was the flame. A white light suddenly flashed across Mo Yun's mind. He suddenly realized. Chu Liyue had indeed controlled the strange blue flames at the foot of the mountain. The thing buried below was definitely already in her hands. Mo Yun was extremely angry and resentful. They had stayed here for almost 2 years and finally confirmed that there was something hidden under Lan Qingfeng. In the end, before they could do anything, Chu Liyue beat them to it. More importantly, when she made her move, they knew that not only Lan Qingfeng, but the surrounding mountains were also inextricably linked to that thing. After suffering for so long, they did not know how many casualties they had paid. In the end, Chu Liyue, who had just arrived at Peach Blossom Cove, beat them to it. How could Mo Yun take this lying down? He suddenly bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood sacrifice array in the sky suddenly surged violently again. A thick black mist was faintly discernible within, but it only appeared for a moment and disappeared in a flash. Rong Xiu seemed to have sensed something and looked up. The black fog had quietly disappeared and could not be seen. But that trace of cold aura still made Rong Xiu squint his eyes slightly. This aura was really familiar. He retracted his gaze and looked at Mo Yun again, deep in thought. Until now, Mo Yun had not really used the power of his bloodline. He would rather cause great damage to himself and sacrifice the blood in his heart, but the bloodline totem did not appear between his eyebrows. Interesting. The sect leader of Black Sword Sect is also surnamed Mo? Rong Xiu suddenly asked. His voice was always cold and low, with a trace of nobility that could not be disobeyed. When it fell into one's ears, one would almost automatically give an answer without warning. How did you? Mo Yun subconsciously spat out these 2 words, and then suddenly became alert. Rong was tricking him. He immediately kept quiet and swallowed the rest of his words. But in Rong Xiu's eyes, this was already a tacit agreement. As expected, Rong Xiu's thin lips slightly raised, but the corners of his eyes and brows were slightly cold. Previously, he felt that there was something wrong with Black Sword Sect, as if it had something to do with that side. Taking advantage of the chaos, he immediately got the answer. Looking at Rong Xiu's expression, Mo Yun secretly gritted his teeth. This man was extremely cunning and had many tricks up his sleeve. If he really guessed something, it was within his expectations. But, for some reason, Rong Xiu did not do anything other than symbolically blocking them. He did not seem to be worried about Chu Liyue's safety at all, and only watched calmly. Was he too confident in Chu Liyue, or did he have other preparations? Mo Yun could not figure it out. Rong Xiu was after all famous, and was definitely not easy to deal with. But now, the one that needed to be killed the most was Chu Liyue. He could not let her continue to act presumptuously here. Thinking of this, Mo Yun forced himself to calm down, and poured all his power into the blood sacrifice formation. Rumble! The heavenly lightning, which was even more magnificent and powerful than before, rolled down. Almost half of the sky was already illuminated by this dazzling light. And those Tianlei's target was Chu Liyue. This Black Sword Sect does have some ability. On top of a steep mountain, Chu Liyue stood halfway up the mountain, narrowing her eyes slightly, and looked at the sky not far away. This formation was much larger than the one they accidentally encountered on the day of 13's breakthrough. Even if several venerable gods joined forces, they might not be able to achieve this, not to mention that there were only a few venerable gods in Black Sword Sect. Including Mo Yun, The number of venerable gods in Black Sword sect was less than that of the Nan family. But Chu Luiwei was certain that even if those venerable gods of the Nan family worked together, they would not be able to trigger Tianlei of this scale. At the end of the day, the problem lay in the so-called blood sacrifice formation and the group of people from Black Sword sect themselves. Moreover, other than being able to trigger Tianlei, they could also control where the Tianlei would fall. She had purposely run left and right a few times just to test the waters. In the end, the Tianlei could indeed follow her and fall. This kind of ability was not something that everyone could have. That was why Chu Luiwei muttered such a sentence. However, after realizing this, she didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. Instead, her starry eyes sparkled with excitement. If that's really the case, that's great. Dumpling glanced sideways at her. Sensing her restless emotions, Dumpling became excited as well. She flapped her wings, and reddish-gold flames burned fiercely around her. If Mo Yun and the others saw Chu Luiwei's expression and knew what she was thinking, they would think that she had gone crazy. They had never seen anyone so happy when there was no one chasing after them. They were clearly in a life-and-death situation, but she did not seem to care. In fact, she was happy and excited. If this was not a problem, then what was? Chu Luiwei looked at the approaching Tianlei and slowly tightened her grip on Scarlet Heaven. The next moment, the corners of her lips lifted slightly. Dumpling, let's go. Before she finished speaking, Dumpling had already flapped her wings and rose into the air. She headed straight for the depths of the forest. Trying to escape? It's not that easy. Mo Yun gritted his teeth. Every word seemed to have been squeezed out from between his teeth. She did not want to escape before, but now she wanted to leave. It was too late. Then, under the gaze of several pairs of eyes, the Tianlei fell one after another, almost nailing Chu Luiwei to death in this mountain range. The terrifying energy formed invisible waves that spread out in all directions. In an instant, the trees collapsed, and countless pink and white peach blossoms and emerald green leaves fluttered in the air. The figure wrapped in reddish-gold flames quickly shuttled through. She left all the Tianlei behind. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1890. Boom, boom, boom. Several mountains were hit hard. The mountains shook and huge rocks rolled down. Huge fissures crisscrossed across the mountain range. Following that, clusters of flames spewed out from the cracks. The temperature between heaven and earth instantly rose. Soon, numerous streams of light flew out from the burning flames. They mixed with the countless Tianlei flames and headed straight for Chu Luiwei. Bang, bang, bang. The black shield blocked in front of her, blocking all the violent energy. At the same time, more and more rust began to peel off. Streaks of light quickly disappeared. The secret text on the shield also began to reveal its original appearance. The terrifying energy quickly numbed Chu Luiwei's arm. The black shield became heavier and heavier, causing her burden to become heavier and heavier. Luckily, Dumpling was there, so her speed did not decrease too much. One person and one beast jumped around in the forest just like that. In just a short while, the entire mountain range had been bombarded by the heavenly lightning and was in shambles. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. Countless blue flames burned on top of the mountain, almost lighting up half of the sky. Scorching hot air rushed towards them. Even though they were still some distance away from the flames, they could still feel the heat on their faces. With a faint burning pain. When Luo Yan saw this scene, he was both shocked and angry, and his heart almost went cold. Nan Yuxing was still trapped in the flames and had not come out yet. He did not know what the situation was like. He made up his mind and was about to move forward. The elders behind him immediately stopped him. Luo Yan, what are you doing? Luo Yan frowned. Eldest young master is still trapped there. If we don't move now, eldest young master will most likely die. The elders looked at each other. Actually, how could they not know this? But the situation now is too dangerous. If you go rashly, not only will you not be able to help, you will also lose your life. I think we should think of another way. Another way? Now, can you think of any other useful methods? Luo Yan asked. The elder who was trying to dissuade him suddenly stopped talking. The remaining elders also had troubled looks on their faces. Luo Yan glanced at them indifferently. You guys wait here, I'll go personally. Nan Yuxing was the only successor of the patriarch. Before they left, the patriarch had repeatedly warned them to protect him. Now that Nan Yuxing was in trouble and was facing a life-and-death crisis, how could Luo Yan sit by and do nothing? Even if he knew that the road ahead was dangerous, he still had to go. We're going too. The other elder hesitated for a moment before responding immediately. At this time, there was really no need to hesitate on this matter. Even if they knew that there was danger ahead and that their efforts were likely to be in vain, they could not slack off on what they should do. Otherwise, if something really happened to Nan Yuxing, the situation they would face when they returned might not be any better. Thus, let's go together. This way, our chances of winning will definitely be greater. The rest of the people nodded in agreement. Luo Yan glanced at them and nodded. Then he turned around and rushed towards the direction where Nan Yuxing was trapped. The elders looked at each other with complicated expressions. But in the end, they didn't say much and chose to follow. At this time, the area where the mountain fire was burning had greatly expanded. The closer they got, the more they could feel the terrifying burning pain and heat. The clusters of blue flames seemed to want to burn the entire heaven and earth into ashes as they jumped wildly. Even though Luo Yan was already a god-level expert, he still felt extremely threatened at this time. Ordinary barriers couldn't stop this heat wave at all. Even the surrounding void started to collapse, and the violent spatial turbulence wreaked havoc everywhere. It was almost impossible to maintain the barrier around them for a long time. In a short while, Luo Yan chose to give up on the barrier and rushed forward at full speed. He couldn't help but look in the direction of Chu Luiyue. That woman was standing on the back of the crimson-gold celestial phoenix. Her dress was fluttering, and her eyes were bright. There was not the slightest bit of fear on her face. There was only endless battle intent. When he met that determined and persistent gaze, Luo Yan's heart felt as if it had been smashed by something. This woman was really not afraid. Even though the mountain fire was raging and Tianlei was bursting, she stood alone without any fear. How could an ordinary person have such courage and fighting spirit? Other than that, Luo Yan had another question in his heart. He was only at the edge now, but he already felt as if he was being roasted by fire. It was very uncomfortable. And Chu Luiyue was in the center of the countless flames. How did she endure it? This thought only flashed through Luo Yan's mind for a moment before it was quickly suppressed. Because he didn't have much time and energy to care about these things now. Right now, he only wanted to save Nan Yuxing as soon as possible. When he was close enough, Luo Yan finally heard a weak cry for help. His heart skipped a beat. This voice belonged to Nan Yuxing. Yuxing? Yuxing? Luo Yan hurried in the direction of the voice. He had a high status in the Nan family, and he would call Nan Yuxing and Nan Yi by their names in private. Although he doted on Nan Yi the most, he also took care of Nan Yuxing. Now that Nan Yi was gone, he was naturally more concerned about Nan Yuxing. If something really happened to Nan Yuxing, Luo Yan took a deep breath. A long crack appeared on the mountain under their feet. The flames were burning fiercely. Vaguely, a figure could be seen struggling in it. Luo Yan's heart was in his mouth. Yuxing. He originally wanted to rush over directly, but the flames were burning too fiercely, and he couldn't get close at all. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Yan's force turned into a whip and flew out fiercely. Slap. The sound of the whip breaking through the air was extremely loud. In the next moment, the long whip flew into the flames and tightly wrapped around Nan Yuxing's waist. Luo Yan pulled hard. A figure wrapped in flames instantly flew out. At this moment, Nan Yuxing was covered in burns and his injuries were extremely serious. He curled up on the ground and trembled violently. Low whimpers and moans came from his throat. It seemed like he didn't have any strength to fight anymore. Luo Yan's heart was in a knot. With such injuries, even if he could barely survive, in the future, he would probably, eldest young master. When the other elders saw this situation, their expressions changed. It wasn't that they didn't think that Nan Yuxing wouldn't be able to escape this calamity, but the situation in front of them was still beyond their imagination. Luo Yan composed himself. Extinguish the fire on eldest young master first. Before he finished speaking, a bloody wound suddenly appeared on Nan Yuxing's arm, who was lying on the ground. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1891. The wound was about an inch long and extremely deep. Even his bones could be seen. Luo Yan hesitated for a moment. Actually, such a scene was nothing to him and the other elders who were used to seeing life and death. The reason why they were so surprised was because the wound had appeared too suddenly. In that instant, there was no external interference. It was obvious that there was something wrong with Nan Yuxing's body. Why would such a wound appear on a normal person's body? Then, before they could react, a similar wound appeared on Nan Yuxing's other hand. Perhaps it was because he had been burned in the fire for too long, but most of his hands had shrunk. However, that bloody wound still appeared out of nowhere. The twisted skin and muscles seemed to have been cut open by something sharp. There was no blood dripping, but it still made one feel uneasy. Luo Yan The elders looked at Luo Yan subconsciously. Although they were all elders, their statuses were slightly inferior to Luo Yan's. Therefore, when something happened, they immediately asked for Luo Yan's opinion. However, Luo Yan's heart was in a mess. His eyes were fixed on the two wounds on Nan Yuxing's body. His expression was terrifyingly solemn. With just one look, he realized that there was something wrong with Nan Yuxing's body. From the looks of it, it was very likely that the force in his body had gone out of control. A god reverend's body had accumulated a large amount of energy. Once it went out of control, it would wreak havoc in the body. The consequences would be unimaginable. Just as he was deep in thought, a wound appeared on Nan Yuxing's shoulder. Moreover, the wound on his arm was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nan Yuxing curled up on the ground. He had lost consciousness and was trembling all over. Save me. His face was severely burned and he couldn't open his eyes. Only the intermittent voices in his ears allowed him to know that Luo Yan and the others were by his side. Nan Yuxing relied on his last bit of willpower and murmured for help. Luo Yan's heart was in a knot and his brows were tightly knitted. Of course, he wanted to save Nan Yuxing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to come here. But, in this situation, what should he do? Seeing that the wounds on Nan Yuxing's body were increasing, Luo Yan could only hurriedly extinguish the sparks on his body and plan to bring him back first. However, before he could touch Nan Yuxing's body, he suddenly heard Nan Yuxing's voice. I'm sorry. Luo Yan abruptly stopped and subconsciously looked at Nan Yuxing's face. Nan Yuxing's face was so badly burned that it was almost unrecognizable. However, Luo Yan could clearly hear the deep pain and guilt in those words. He stared blankly for a while and did not move. Sorry? Why did Nan Yuxing suddenly say that? Was he blaming himself for not protecting Nanyi earlier? But it didn't sound, tone. It was as if he had done something wrong to Nanyi. Luo, seeing that Luo Yan had suddenly stopped moving, seemingly deep in thought, the elders felt a little strange. This voice brought Luo Yan back to his senses. I'm fine. He hurriedly replied. Just as he was about to continue, he suddenly sensed a wave of energy overflowing from Nan Yuxing's wounds. This energy was very mottled, but it was mixed with an extremely familiar aura. Luo Yan's eyes widened. He looked at Nan Yuxing in shock. This aura. He almost couldn't control himself. He quickly reached out and grabbed Nan Yuxing's wrist. Hey Luo Yan, what's wrong? Luo Yan's expression was very strange. He couldn't help but make the few elders beside him worried. He was clearly fine just now. Why did he suddenly? However, at this moment, Luo Yan could no longer hear their voices. He separated a part of his force and forced it into Nan Yuxing's body. As expected, the energy in Nan Yuxing's body was completely messed up. But the key point was, Luo Yan was clearly familiar with this energy. And that Yuan meridian? Luo Yan's hand trembled slightly. His face turned pale and the veins on his forehead popped out. A deep sense of anger radiated from his body. The few elders sensed danger. They glanced at each other and didn't dare to ask any more questions. Luo Yan rarely revealed such an expression. They didn't know what was going on. Just as they were filled with doubts, they saw Luo Yan let go of Nan Yuxing's wrist and suddenly choked his neck. Luo Yan, eldest young master. This sudden turn of events caused the remaining elders to be stunned. They couldn't help but open their mouths in a panicked manner. However, Luo Yan's eyes were scarlet. There was a trace of malevolence in his expression. It was truly terrifying. He stared at Nan Yuxing and said word by word. "Speak. How did he die?" The moment he said that, the elders were all shocked. What did Luo Yan mean by suddenly asking eldest young master this question? Could it be that Nan Yi's death was related to eldest young master? But how was that possible? Nan Yuxing was originally in a half-dead state. After being provoked by Luo Yan, he became more awake. When he met Luo Yan's gaze, a strong sense of fear surged into his heart. Nan Yuxing muttered almost reflexively. "I don't know." Bang! Luo Yan suddenly made his move. He grabbed Nan Yuxing's neck and slammed his head to the ground. "Tell me the truth." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1892. Luo Yan was ruthless. This time, Nan Yuxing's head was smashed open. Blood splattered everywhere. Nan Yuxing's head buzzed and he almost fainted. The elders standing by the side were also completely dumbfounded. Why did Luo Yan suddenly attack so heavily? Nan Yuxing was the eldest young master. If anything happened to him, how were they going to explain it when they returned? Luo Yan's attitude was also very strange. Just a moment ago, he didn't care about his own safety and wanted to save Nan Yuxing. In the end, for some reason, his attitude suddenly took a 180-degree turn. From the looks of it, not only did he not intend to save Nan Yuxing, he even wanted to kill Nan Yuxing personally. "Luo Yan, calm down." An elder finally couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up. But before he could say anything else, Luo Yan turned around and glanced at him. This glance was extremely cold. It was as if it was wrapped in deep anger and hatred. That elder's heart skipped a beat and he couldn't say anything to persuade him. They had never seen Luo Yan like this. In the entire Nan family, Luo Yan's strength was one of the top few people. His status was noble, but his personality was very indifferent. He rarely interfered in any of the Nan family's decisions and would only intervene when it involved Nan Yi. This time, he suddenly acted like this. Could it be that he was sure that Nan Yi's death was really related to Nan Yuxing? But how was this possible? Nan Yuxing was Nan Yi's biological brother. Luo Yan retracted his gaze and grabbed Nan Yuxing's neck, forcing him to raise his head. "Speak. What's going on with your Yuan meridian?" Nan Yuxing's heart turned cold. Luo Yan actually asked such a question. So what Chu Luiyue said before was all true? Nan Yuxing's mind was in a mess. Coupled with his serious injuries, the blood in his body surged and he spat out a mouthful of blood. But he couldn't spit out a single word. His guess was confirmed and his heart was like dead ashes. Seeing his reaction, how could Luo Yan not understand? He slowly tightened his grip and a strong killing intent surged out from his eyes. Bits and pieces of the past flashed through his mind in an incomparably chaotic manner. He had always felt that Nan Yi's death was a little strange. However, due to his overwhelming grief and lack of evidence, he was certain that the mysterious man he saw before he fainted that day was from the Yuntian Tower. Because of this, he hated Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue to the core. When Nan Yuxing mentioned that he wanted to come to the Peach Blossom Cove to seek revenge, he agreed without hesitation. But he never would have thought the real person who killed Nan Yi was actually someone else. The Yuan meridian and energy in Nan Yuxing's body clearly belonged to Nan Yi. No wonder he could recover in such a short time. He even made a breakthrough. So all of this was because he had to bear Nan Yi's life. Now that the truth was in front of his eyes, Everything that had happened before seemed very wrong. Now that he thought about it, he should have sensed that something was wrong. However, his eyes had long been blinded by hatred, so how could he see those things? Until now. Everything was revealed. Luo Yan suddenly laughed. He truly felt that he was ridiculous, and he also felt that Nan Yuxing was ridiculous. They all said that they were here to avenge Nan Yi, but in reality, they had found the wrong person. Especially Nan Yuxing, he was simply a thief crying thief. What a joke! That smiling face kept flashing in front of Luo Yan's eyes. His eyes turned cold and he slowly tightened his grip. Nan Yuxing sensed danger and instinctively wanted to escape. However, the energy in his body was raging wildly, and his internal organs were almost severely damaged. He didn't even have the strength to stand up, so how could he talk about anything else? Therefore, he could only gasp for breath and tremble in vain. Luo Yan's face was expressionless. Luo Yan. The few elders also felt that his condition was very strange. Just as they were about to open their mouths to persuade him, they heard the crisp sound of bones cracking. Crack. The few of them were horrified. Luo Yan had broken Nan Yuxing's neck. He wanted his life. Nan Yuxing's head tilted and his body trembled. Soon he stopped breathing. There was dead silence. Everyone did not think that Luo Yan was actually really so heartless. He killed Nan Yuxing without hesitation. Because they were too shocked, the few elders all subconsciously held their breaths. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. However, Luo Yan acted as if nothing had happened and stood up. He raised his arm and flicked his wrist. Nan Yuxing's corpse was thrown back into the burning flames by him. In the blink of an eye, it was completely devoured. The whole process was smooth and Luo Yan didn't hesitate at all. Then, he turned around and looked at the remaining elders. His eyes were cold and gloomy like never before. Eldest young master was defeated by Shangguan Yu and died in the sea of fire. The elders understood that this was an order. Luo Yan had killed the first young master in front of them. How could he still say that it was Shangguan Yu who did it? We will avenge the young master. One of the elders was the first to react. His face was pale and he said with a trembling voice. Luo Yan nodded in satisfaction. For eldest young master, we will go through fire and water. Today, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will not hesitate. What do you think? What else can we do? You've already said so much. Can others still refute you? The elders nodded their heads stiffly. Even though they had seen many storms, this was the first time they had experienced something like this. Luo Yan nodded. Whoever kills Shangguan Yu will be the hero of the Nan family. In the distance, Chu Luiyue, who had just dodged Tianlei, also noticed the situation here and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Luo Yan killed Nan Yuxing with his own hands and planned to push the blame to her? Her red lips curled into an extremely cold smile. She wasn't surprised that Luo Yan killed Nan Yuxing. She had long seen that Luo Yan had feelings for Nanny. Although he hid it very well, some things could be seen at a glance. But she wasn't happy that he wanted to drag her down with him. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1893. As if sensing her gaze, Luo Yan suddenly raised his head and looked over. The two of them were far apart, but at this moment, when their eyes met, they could clearly see the emotions surging in each other's eyes. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Luo Yan, Nan Yuxing was killed by you. Everyone saw it clearly. Aren't you too much to push the blame onto me? Luo Yan's expression was cold. You were the one who caused Nan Yuxing's injuries, and he died in this strange flame in the end. What's wrong with me saying that you killed him? Chu Luiyue laughed. After hearing Luo Yan's words and knowing his plan, Chu Luiyue knew that this person had gone mad. There was no need to continue talking to him. Nan Yuxing was Nan Yifan's only son. In order to save Nan Yuxing, Nan Yifan was even willing to give up his other daughter's life. This showed how much Nan Yuxing valued his only heir. Now Nan Yuxing was dead. Whoever killed him would become Nan Yifan's mortal enemy. Offending Nan Yifan was undoubtedly offending the entire Nan family. No one would be able to bear the consequences of such a serious incident. Luo Yen dared to do this in broad daylight because he was sure that the elders would not dare to tell anyone about this. Moreover, one side was his own people and the other side was his enemy. Who would Nan Yifan believe? The answer was self-evident. Boom! Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. This time, it was even stronger than the previous one. It almost tore apart the dark clouds that had accumulated in the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up. Just in time. As soon as she thought about it, Tuanzi immediately understood and flapped its wings to fly up. This time, Dumpling headed straight for the mountains further away. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and looked at the black shield in her hand. After the fierce battle just now, more than 10 pieces of rust had fallen off. The efficiency was much higher than before. However, the rust that fell off was only 1/10 of the entire shield. She could see that the secret text on it was gradually revealing itself. Although he could only see the tip of the iceberg for now, Chu Luiyue had a clear premonition in his heart. Once the rust on it completely peeled off, it would definitely shine brightly. A faint lustrous glow lingered on the black shield, faintly discernible. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound came from the front. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up. Not far in front of him, the void was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The closer half of the mountain started to shake violently under the impact of the spatial turbulence. Some of the mountain rocks began to roll towards the strange black clouds. A terrifying suction force was emitted from within. It was as if it wanted to devour everything. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. The void energy of the Peach Blossom Cove was chaotic and could easily collapse. Now that such an intense battle had broken out, it was normal for such a situation to occur. However, the speed of the collapse still exceeded Chu Luiyue's expectations. She frowned slightly and decided to let Dumpling change the direction. However, at this moment, the black shield suddenly emitted a faint buzzing sound. Chu Luiyue's heart shook. The black shield's reaction proved that there was an extremely important force hidden under the mountain. She had to go. Tuanzi turned her head and glanced at her. Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes, then suddenly lifted herself up and jumped. She actually went straight for the mountain alone. Almost at the same time, an astonishing suction force wrapped around her from all directions. The moment her feet landed on the mountain, her body suddenly fell. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the void that had already collapsed beyond recognition. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed. Digression. I'm going to slack off and eat the New Year's Eve dinner. I wish everyone a Happy New Year. Be healthy and safe. Be victorious in everything. In the future, we will continue to be together every day. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1894. With a thought, his figure instantly disappeared from where he was. Master! 13 and the rest also became anxious. Just as they were about to move, Sun Yi stopped them. Wait and see. Sun Yi's words were concise. Wu Yao looked at the terrifying scene and couldn't help but ask, Big brother, are we still not doing anything at this time? The situation on Master's side seemed to be really dangerous. Thus, the void is collapsing. Before long, the entire Peach Blossom dock will. Yu Jiao gripped her wooden sword tightly, her heart burning with anxiety. Sun Yi's expression was as calm as ever. If you go over now, you'll only cause trouble for Master. Why don't you just stay here? Wu Yao and the rest were conflicted. On one hand, they were worried about Master. On the other hand, they trusted Big Brother. Seeing Sun Yi like this, it seemed they really didn't need to worry. Sai, don't worry. I don't dare to say anything about other places, but here. Master will definitely be fine. Sanson, who was at the side, also advised. He had personally witnessed the power of Master and that black shield. That day, it had almost burned his small space. Although the flames on the mountains looked scary, thinking about it carefully, wasn't Master the one who set them off herself? Sanson could vaguely guess what Master was looking for. From the start, she deliberately ran over here and used Tianlei, which was triggered by the blood sacrifice array of Majian sect, to split the mountains. Wasn't everything planned by Master long ago? And Rong Xiu's reaction earlier was clearly to cooperate with Master. The power of Peach Blossom Dock space is very chaotic. Whenever there's a problem, such a situation will occur. However, it usually doesn't take long to automatically recover. Moreover, Master has many trump cards. Such a small fluctuation isn't enough to hurt her. You can put your hearts back into your stomachs. Although Sanson spent most of his attention and energy on business, he was still very trustworthy when he was serious at critical moments. Right now, apart from Sun Yi, he had the highest status among the 13 U-guards present. Hearing him say this, Wu Yao and the rest exchanged glances. Although they could see the worry in each other's eyes, they didn't say anything in the end and nodded in agreement. "Look!" 13 suddenly exclaimed, attracting everyone's attention. Several pairs of eyes looked over. At this moment, Rong Xiu's figure suddenly appeared above a mountain peak in the distance. The wind blew, and the corners of his snow-white clothes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. A golden flame suddenly gushed out from his palm and transformed into countless stars that scattered in all directions. From afar, it looked like a barrier, but also like a giant net. "Condense!" A low and cold voice spread far and wide in this dark and bitterly cold world. As soon as he finished speaking, the collapsing space suddenly froze. The black spatial crack seemed to have been enveloped by the giant net formed by the golden light dots, and it stopped collapsing. At this moment, the scene seemed to freeze. Time and space seemed to have stopped flowing. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. The collapse of the void was caused by the collision of internal and external forces. It was not something that could be controlled by human strength. Otherwise, Peach Blossom Cove would not have remained unoccupied for so many years. However, at this moment, Rong Xiu directly froze the collapsing void and forcefully suppressed the rampaging space turbulence. This was simply, how is this possible? Mo Yun's eyes suddenly widened, and they were filled with horror. Just a moment ago, when he saw Chu Liuyue's figure being swallowed by the void, he was secretly delighted. He had stayed here for so long, and he had seen many similar scenes. No matter who it was, once they were sucked into it, their ending would be extremely miserable. There was a 99% chance that they would be crippled even if they did not die. It would be best if Chu Liyue could die inside directly. If not, even if he managed to escape alive, he would not be able to make it. At that time, wouldn't he be at their mercy? It would be up to them to kill or torture him. However, who knew that Rong Xiu, who had been watching from the sidelines, would suddenly make a move? And his strength was so powerful. Looking at the tall figure standing in the air, Mo Yun's heart suddenly flashed with a trace of inexplicable fear. One must know that even he might not be able to do this. However, Rong Xiu sighed. With just a light lift of his hand, he did it easily. As if it was effortless. Mo Yun had long heard many rumors about Rong Xiu. He knew that this man was not easy to deal with. However, he did not expect him to be so heaven-defying. Such strength had long surpassed the strength of an ordinary venerable god expert. On the other side, Luo Yen and the others who were about to give chase also stopped in their tracks when they saw this scene, and their expressions were complicated. Forcefully freezing the collapsing void. How did that Rong Xiu do it? An elder said in disbelief, almost unable to believe what he saw. They were also venerable gods, but if they were to make a move, they would definitely not be able to do so. If he's so powerful, why didn't he make a move earlier? If he really wants to fight with us, I'm afraid it'll be another tough battle. Another elder was also deeply worried. Previously, their attention was focused on Chu Liyue, and they did not pay much attention to other things. However, when Rong Xiu made a move, they finally realized that something was wrong. Since he's so powerful, isn't it intentional that he's been watching from the sidelines? Is he too confident in Chu Liyue, or is there another reason? They could not figure out these things, and they became more and more flustered. Moreover, the strength that Rong Xiu had displayed had far exceeded their expectations. Luo Yen stared at Rong Xiu's figure, and his hands gradually clenched into fists. If Rong Xiao stopped him, then what happened later would be difficult to proceed according to plan. Now, he vaguely understood why Nan Yifan was so afraid of Rong Xiao. Boom! The blood sacrifice formation hung in the sky, and blood qi filled the sky. Crazy power wreaked havoc everywhere, and Tianlei was still falling one after another. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1895. The next moment, Chu Liuyue's figure rushed out of the dazzling golden light that enveloped the sky. Everyone immediately looked over. The woman's red dress fluttered in the wind. She had black hair, snow-white skin, and bright eyes. The corners of her eyes and the tip of her brows were filled with intense battle intent. She was completely unscathed. For a moment, everyone present had different reactions. The people from the 13th Yu naturally heaved a sigh of relief. However, the people from the Black Sword sect and the Nan family had dark expressions. It was one thing for Rong Xiao to be so heaven-defying, but how could Chu Luiyue, a mere high god, be so strong as well? Even her eminence might not be able to escape unscathed from the collapsing void. How could she? More importantly, the place where Chu Luiyue was swallowed by the void and charged out of it was not the same. There was a deep valley in between. Why does it seem like Rong Xiao already knew that she would come out from there and purposely went there early to wait? That's impossible, right? Who would be able to guess this? Who doesn't know that once a cultivator enters the void, even they don't know where they will be sent to? Not to mention Rong Xiao. But the current situation doesn't seem right. The elders of the Nan family discussed in low voices. Luo Yin didn't say anything, but his expression turned even uglier. The more the other party acted like this, the more difficult it was to deal with. He raised his head to take a look. The blood sacrifice array was still operating. People from the Black Sword sect were rushing over and joining in. This caused the blood sacrifice array to become stronger and stronger. But, even though the Tianlei had almost completely destroyed the rolling mountain range, Chu Luiyue was still safe and sound. This couple was simply one weirder than the other. Screech! Tuanzi let out a clear cry, drew a reddish-gold ray of light in midair, and rapidly flew toward Chu Luiyue. Everyone had mixed feelings. At first, they thought that Chu Luiyue was able to dodge so many attacks because of the reddish-gold celestial phoenix's help. But what happened now was like a slap to their faces. Even if Chu Luiyue relied on his own strength, he could still move around like a fish in water. Rong Xiao. Chu Luiyue finally heaved a sigh of relief after escaping from the chaotic space and the thick darkness. When that familiar handsome and enchanting face came into view, her hanging heart immediately calmed down a lot. Rong Xiao reached out to her. Come here. Chu Luiyue walked forward. Crack. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking could be heard. Chu Luiyue was shocked and quickly looked over. It was the void that was forcefully frozen by Rong Xiao, and there was a crack. Rong Xiao narrowed his eyes and immediately went forward. He grabbed Chu Liuyue's hand and took her into his arms. The next moment, just as he turned around, the space behind him finally broke free from the huge golden net and collapsed again. Countless fine golden lights scattered in all directions. A terrifying force rushed toward the surroundings. Rong Xiao took a step and already moved to another position with Chu Luiyue. Dumpling followed closely behind. It flapped its wings and left behind a flame to block that force. Although it couldn't completely block that violent force, it still gave Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao enough time to leave. A loud bang was heard. Chu Luiyue leaned on Rong Xiao's arms and looked over his shoulder. The space was collapsing more and more. More and more black was spreading between heaven and earth. Chu Liuyue's heart suddenly tightened. Rong Xiao's strength could only temporarily suppress a small area. But looking at the current situation, the entire Peach Blossom Cove would be affected. Digression. Happy New Year to everyone. Continued at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1896. How was it? Rong Xiao asked the person in his arms in a low voice. Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze. The two looked into each other's eyes. She nodded slightly. Everything went well. There was no need for any superfluous words. Their minds were connected, so he naturally knew what she was planning to do. That's good. Rong Xiao's thin lips curved into a smile. Although she wasn't injured, she must have used up a lot of energy after going through several rounds of bombardment. It wouldn't be easy if she didn't get anything out of it after working so hard. Fortunately, she always knew what she was doing. It was the same this time. Do you want to continue? Rong Xiao asked. He looked down at the black shield in her hand. A small part of the rust on it had already peeled off. Faint light could be seen lingering on it. The secret text engraved on it was gradually revealing its original appearance. Chu Luiwei nodded, then frowned slightly. But there's nothing here. We have to find another place. It was a rare opportunity. Of course, she had to continue. However, she had already tested all the places here. There was nothing she needed at the bottom of the remaining mountains. Therefore, she had to continue fighting this battle, but she had to find another place. Rong Xiao nodded with a calm expression. He was not surprised at all. Then let's change. Peach Blossom Dock was vast. This place was just a corner of it. When Chu Luiwei said that she wanted to search the entire Peach Blossom Dock, he had already expected such a situation. Chu Luiwei nodded and looked at the black shield in her hand again. As the rust on it peeled off, the weight of this thing was increasing. Chu Luiwei was already having a hard time holding it with one hand. She started to circulate the force in her body to reduce the weight. However, this action consumed an enormous amount of his strength. Fortunately, the force in her dantian was abundant. It wasn't a problem for her to deal with this for the time being. She just didn't know what would happen in the end. Chu Luiwei quickly put these thoughts away. She walked out of Rong Xiao's arms. Let's split up. Rong Xiao knew that she had other plans, so he didn't ask and just squeezed her hand. Be careful, I'll stay with you. Chu Luiwei's heart warmed, and she held his hand. His dry and warm palm emitted a comforting warmth that made her feel at ease. She didn't say anything. She just took a deep look at Rong Xiao, her eyes bright. With Rong Xiao around, she could always feel at ease. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. After that, Chu Luiwei turned around, tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and dashed forward. Dumpling followed closely behind. The figures of man and beast quickly disappeared into the distance. Rong Xiao, on the other hand, chose another direction and kept a distance from them, following them at a leisurely pace. Everyone was stunned. What are these two doing? Since Rong Xiao went to bring them out, why did he let Chu Luiwei leave alone? Isn't he worried at all with the turbulence in all directions? The people of Black Sword Sect and Nan family were stunned. They couldn't figure out what Rong Xiao and Chu Luiwei's motive for doing this. The 13 Yu guards were shocked at first, but they quickly chose to accept it. Judging from the situation, it's their master who wants to do this. Then there's nothing to worry about. Sin Yi moved. Follow them. As soon as he gave the order, Sanson and the others immediately responded, and then chased after him. They didn't care what their master wanted to do. They only knew that no matter what, they had to follow their master. Everything happened too quickly. By the time the rest of the people reacted, a few people, including the 13 Yu guards, had already left with Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiao. Seeing their figures getting further and further away, Mo Yun and the others finally regained their senses. Vice Sect Master, they're running away. Someone said anxiously. Mo Yun's face seemed to be covered with a thick layer of ice, stiff and cold. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent that was about to overflow. Of course, he could see that. But the key was, where were they planning to go? No, perhaps he should ask what Chu Luiwei wanted to do. The two of them seemed to have said something, but he was still some distance away from them and couldn't hear it. But judging from their reactions afterward, it wasn't hard to guess that it was Chu Luiwei's idea to leave on their own. She hasn't had enough trouble here, and now she wants to run further away? Activate the second level of the blood sacrifice formation. Mo Yun gave the order without any hesitation. Anyway, he had to kill this person today. When the people of Black Sword Sect heard this, they all looked hesitant. Mo Lin hesitated for a moment, but still spoke. Vice Sect Master, the blood sacrifice formation is very powerful, and it consumes a lot of energy. If we activate the second level, it will definitely cause more chaos. At that time, it will be even more difficult to capture them. Mo Yun looked at him with a cold smile. Mo Lin, you've become so bold now that you don't even listen to my orders? Mo Lin's face paled, and he hurriedly explained. Vice Sect Master, this subordinate definitely didn't mean that. This subordinate just felt that this blood sacrifice formation doesn't seem to have much effect on Shangguanyu. The dozens of people from Black Sword Sect who followed them here had already made their move. Tun Lei, which was summoned here, couldn't be said to not be terrifying. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to destroy this mountain range in such a short period of time. But what about Chu Luiyue? She was completely unharmed. She clearly had an extremely powerful trump card that allowed her to deal with such a terrifying attack easily. If they wanted to activate the second level of the blood sacrifice formation, they would need an extremely large amount of energy to support it. If that was the case, they might not be able to do anything to Chu Luiyue, but these people from Black Sword Sect would most likely be in trouble. Others might not know, but Mo Lin, who was from Black Sword Sect, knew all of this. The reason why the blood sacrifice formation was so powerful and could erupt with so much power was because once this formation was activated, it would crazily steal and devour the essence and blood of the people who activated it. If it was light, they would be injured, and their future and lifespan would be damaged. If it was heavy, they would die. The cold smile on Mo Yun's face gradually faded. In its place was an undisguised anger and killing intent. Then, do you have a better idea? He asked in an extremely cold voice. Sensing that something was wrong with his aura, Mo Lin's blood seemed to have stopped flowing. No, this subordinate is useless. Before he could finish his sentence, Mo Yun had already raised his hand. A black and red origin power surged out from his palm. It transformed into a long whip and coiled around Mo Lin's neck. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Mo Lin's body flew uncontrollably onto the huge blood sacrifice formation. In almost an instant, that figure was swallowed by the surging blood qi. Digression, Kana, slowly updating at around 6:30 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1897. Molin only let out a short and hurried scream before he quickly fell silent. Soon, when the blood faded, there was only a skeleton left in the middle of the blood sacrifice array. There were only a few pieces of scarlet flesh hanging on the bones. It was extremely bloody. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Some of them could not help but turn around and vomit. Actually, to the people of Ink Sword Sect, they had seen all kinds of bloody and cruel scenes. However, the scene in front of them still had a huge impact on them, especially when the person who died was Mo Lin. He was Mo Yun's confidant. Previously, when Lan Qingfeng was in trouble, Mo Lin did not take his life. Mo Yun even gave him a chance to make up for his mistake by meritorious deeds. However, now, Mo Yun had directly taken action and used such a terrifying and cruel method to end Mo Lin's life. What confidant? What importance? Anyone who dared to disobey Mo Yun's orders would end up like this. Mo Yun was such a person. Who else wants to object? Mo Yun looked around and asked coldly. No one spoke. Even those who had a strong reaction and were retching were so scared that their faces turned pale. They quickly stopped. Dead silence. It was not the first time they knew that Mo Yun was ruthless. However, today, Mo Yun's actions had refreshed their understanding of him. Mo Lin's skeleton was being crushed by the power of the blood sacrifice array. That voice made one's heart turn cold. At this time, who would dare to stand out and say, no? Mo Yun nodded with satisfaction. This was the effect he wanted. It was not easy to cultivate a subordinate who was convenient to use, but it was not a pity to lose him. At most, he could choose another one in the future. After all, Ink Sword Sect did not lack people the most. Mo Yun crossed his hands in front of him. Blood sacrifice array 2nd level, open. The dark clouds in the sky were gathering more and more. The thick, nauseating smell of blood permeated the air. Chu Luiwe looked back and frowned slightly. The blood sacrifice array seemed to have changed. Mo Yun had made up his mind to fight to the death and kill her. In fact, she was not afraid of Tianlei, which they had summoned. However, she still felt a little uneasy in her heart. This was because the space around her had been collapsing along the way. Between heaven and earth, violent energy collided in all directions, tearing apart countless spatial cracks. Although she had stayed in the Peach Blossom Cove before, she had never caused such a huge commotion. Looks like I have to end this as soon as possible, Chu Luiwe thought to himself. As long as he could find the remaining ones as soon as possible and completely peel off the rust on the black shield, this matter would come to an end. At that time, the collapsed void of the Peach Blossom dock should be able to repair itself. A slight fluctuation suddenly came from the distant horizon. Chu Luiwe's heart stirred as he looked into the distant sky. The Peach Blossom dock's enchantment fell from the sky at the point where the heavens and earth connected. That was where the energy fluctuation had come from. Chu Luiwe's heart sank slightly. Even the barrier was affected? There was no time to lose. He had to end the battle quickly. As this thought flashed through his mind, Chu Luiwe once again circulated the origin power in his body. He rushed forward at an even faster speed. The commotion here was too big. Very quickly, many people in the Peach Blossom Dock City were alerted. What's going on over there? You still don't know? That's Ink Sword Sect chasing after the people of the U residence. U residence? Third boss? How is this possible? Isn't the relationship between Third Boss and Ink Sword Sect very good? Why would Ink Sword Sect suddenly attack the people of the U residence? How can it be fake? I saw them chasing out of the city with my own eyes. Other than Ink Sword Sect, there was another group of people who seemed to be involved in the chase as well. The group that came seemed to be the Nan family of the Divine Ruins world. The leader seemed to be the young master of the Nan family. However, their target was not Third Boss. Do you still remember that some people came to the U residence a while ago? This time, Ink Sword Sect and Nan family were going to deal with them. Didn't they say that they were Third Boss's friends? What friends? Among those people, there was the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, Rong Xiu, and his new princess consort, Shang Guanyu. The Ink Sword Sect and Nan family joined forces to chase after the two of them. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. Rong Xiu, Shang Guanyu. These two names were like thunder in the ears of the people of the Divine Ruins world recently. Even the Peach Blossom Dock, which was located at the border of the Divine Ruins world, had heard of them. It couldn't be helped. What happened at the wedding ceremony of the two people was too shocking. Because of this, the people were even more confused. It's actually the two of them. Didn't they just get married at the Yuntian Tower not long ago? Why would they suddenly come to the Peach Blossom Dock? I heard that Third Boss is from Shangguanyu. That's not the point. Aren't Rong Xiu and Shangguanyu close to the two primordial divine beast clans? What exactly did they do to make the people of the Black Sword Sect and the Nan family hate them so much, to the point that they would rather offend such existences than kill the two of them? This was what everyone couldn't figure out. They are still fighting. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Everyone's expression changed when they looked over. The sky in the distance was already covered by layers of dark clouds. Several Tianlei surged in the sky, and its aura was terrifying. The terrifying collision caused the endless void to collapse. However, at this moment, a petite figure in a red dress was flying across the sky at high speed. Wherever it passed, silver and red starlight intertwined like a surging river. That's a godly realm? Someone couldn't help but mumble in shock. Didn't they say that Shangguanyu is only a high god? How can she use such a terrifying godly realm? They were still quite a distance away from that place, but they could still faintly feel that astonishing aura and pressure. This is bad. The barrier of Peach Blossom Dock is about to collapse. Someone exclaimed in shock. Is she going to destroy Peach Blossom Dock? Digression, I'm tired. I want to rest. That's all for today. I'll make it up to you later. What? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1898. It's not because of her, it's because of the Ink Sword sect. Another cry of surprise came from the crowd. Many people flew up one after another and looked in that direction. At this time, half of the sky was covered by thick black clouds, and the sky was dark. Furthermore, the clouds were still rapidly spreading towards the city from that side. Tianlei was moving crazily in the clouds. A huge blood-red totem hung in the air. That's the Ink Sword sect's totem? Some sharp-eyed people recognized the appearance of the totem and murmured in shock. It's obviously because of them. It's them. A young man in the crowd suddenly said with certainty. This is the Ink Sword sect's usual method. Their monthly assessment was actually the same method they used to pass the test. As long as a few people work together and set up a similar formation, they can quickly attract Tianlei. They used these heavenly lightning to screen out the cultivators who were taking part in the assessment. Only those who were talented enough and strong enough would be able to survive this round. As for the rest, they were the ones who took the lives of the rest. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The street was dead silent for a moment, and then a commotion broke out. Is this real? Those people are all dead? It can't be, right? Only 10 or 20% of the Black Sword sect's monthly assessment are able to pass. If the remaining ones all die, then wouldn't the number of people they've killed over the past 1 or 2 years be countless? This, brother, you should be careful with your words. If the Ink Sword sect's people hear it, the man snorted. So what if they hear it? I saw it with my own eyes, it's definitely not fake. Besides, it's been so long, haven't any of you suspected that those who failed to enter the Ink Sword sect all left the Peach Blossom Cove and never appeared again? The crowd fell silent. Actually, it wasn't that no one had suspected this, but the Ink Sword sect was too powerful in the Peach Blossom Cove. Even if there were people who had doubts, not many would dare to verify it. Now that someone suddenly said this, it naturally caused many people's hearts to waver. If you have the time to doubt the truth, why don't you think about what to do next? The Black Sword sect was clearly determined to kill Rong Xiu and Sheng Guanyu. They were willing to pay any price to do so. Even Mo Yun personally took action. If the Peach Blossom Dock really collapses, at that time, it will be difficult for everyone to escape death. The man's voice was deep and powerful, causing many people's hearts to tighten. They were not stupid and knew that this was definitely not an exaggeration. In an instant, many people felt discontent and resentment towards the Black Sword sect. It doesn't matter if you want to kill someone or if you want to die. But you can't let so many people from Peach Blossom Cove die with you, right? By creating such a huge commotion, wasn't it obvious that they wanted everyone in the city to suffer as well? If the Peach Blossom Dock was destroyed, none of the people here would be able to escape. Then what should we do now? Someone asked hurriedly. The man pondered for a moment. According to what I know, their formation is very strange. The more people that participate, the stronger it becomes. Just now, I saw that Mo Yun had already sent out a signal to gather the people from the Black Sword sect. I think he wants them to go and help. In my opinion, why don't we go and stop the people from the Black Sword sect first? If fewer people go, the formation won't have more power to support it. Naturally, it won't work. Many people looked at each other when they heard this. Is this feasible? That's the Black Sword sect we're talking about. With so few people, can we be a match for them? That's right. Moreover, if Mo Yun decides to punish us. The man raised his eyebrows. Everyone, if we don't stop the Black Sword sect today, we don't even know if we can survive until tomorrow. Moreover, the Black Sword sect has been tyrannical in the Peach Blossom Dock for a long time. It's time for them to learn a lesson. Isn't that right? In any case, today I, Duan Qingchuan, will fight the Black Sword sect to the end. If you want to, then follow me. If you don't dare, I won't force you. Anyway, life and death are predestined. Everyone, please do as you wish. After he finished speaking, he actually pushed off the ground with the tip of his foot and headed straight in the direction of the Ink Sword sect. Brother Duan. We'll go with you. Me too. We'll go too. The Black Sword sect killed a few of my brothers. We've wanted to take revenge for this for a long time. At this critical moment, many people gritted their teeth and made the decision to follow Duan Qingchuan. Actually, Duan Qingchuan was right. Even if it was for themselves, they had to take action this time. The Black Sword sect had already disregarded the safety of the entire Peach Blossom dock. Why should they show mercy? More and more people headed towards the Black Sword sect. Soon, they met the people who were coming out of the Black Sword sect and were planning to head towards Mo Yun. Seeing this, the people were even more certain of their guesses. The Black Sword sect was truly willing to gamble with the strength of their entire sect. Stop them! Duan Qingchuan shouted and took the lead to charge forward. When the people beside him heard this, they immediately made their moves. Before the people of the Black Sword sect could react to what was happening, a fierce battle had already broken out. Both sides quickly clashed. The Black Sword sect had already sent out most of their top forces. In addition, due to the incident with Lan Qingfeng, they had already lost many people. Hence, they did not have the upper hand in the battle with Duan Qingchuan and the others. The news spread quickly. Many people in the Peach Blossom dock rushed over one after another. It was obvious that they wanted to get rid of the people of the Black Sword sect. Seeing that more and more people were coming, the Black Sword sect that was initially dismissive finally panicked. What's going on? Why are there so many people rushing over in such a short time? In a remote courtyard in the west of the city, a figure hurriedly walked in. In the courtyard, a person was standing with his hands behind his back. My lord, Qingchuan and the others have already led their men to the Black Sword sect. We've also mobilized all the troops in the city to head there together. The Black Sword sect is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. We should be able to take them down soon. That person turned around. He had a handsome face and a cold gaze. It was Yan Qing. Digression. Today's update time is not fixed. Let's read it together at 6 p.m. The epidemic is serious. We've already sealed off the districts and villages here. Everyone should stay at home. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1899. He nodded slightly. You must kill all the people from Ink Sword sect. Leave no one alive. His voice was cold and indifferent as usual. That person replied. We have been hiding here for a long time, waiting for this day. We will not disappoint you. Yan Qing's brows twitched. Back then, it was His Highness who personally appointed you, so he naturally trusts you. The man chuckled. I thought we would have to wait a little longer, but His Highness and the princess consort arrived so quickly. It must be third boss's doing. If he hadn't started a business here and wrote to Tsun-Yi and the others, they would have to wait even longer. Yan Qing pondered for a moment. Do the people of Yu Manor know about you? I don't think so. We spend most of our time scattered around Peach Blossom Cove. Even when we attacked Ink Sword sect this time, we split up and acted separately. If even Ink Sword sect didn't notice, it's impossible for Yu Manor to know. That person chuckled. Don't worry. Before we came here, His Highness told us that if the princess consort's people came, we didn't have to show ourselves. Later on, third boss came and quickly started the business. We didn't join in the fun. If they didn't have to deal with Ink Sword sect this time, they wouldn't even meet Yan Qing. Originally, we thought that since third boss came here alone, he would be isolated and helpless, so we planned to help him secretly. But we didn't expect third boss to be so capable that he didn't need us at all. Moreover, he built Yu Manor in such a short time. He gave a thumbs up. As expected of the princess consort's people. Very impressive. Hearing this, Yan Qing narrowed his eyes. A seductive and wanton figure suddenly flashed through his mind. He raised his brows slightly. The 13th Yu Manor is indeed extraordinary. That person didn't notice the subtle change in his expression and continued to ask. Sir, we have more or less taken control of Ink Sword sect. Do you want to send people to His Highness and the Princess Consort's side? No need. Before he could finish speaking, Yan Qing spoke up and rejected his suggestion. Sin Yi and the others have already gone over. Moreover, His Highness and Princess Consort did this intentionally, so there's no need to worry. That person raised his head hesitantly. But, sir, look at the commotion over there. It's almost spreading to the city. Did he really not need their help? Yan Qing lifted his gaze slightly and looked towards the horizon. Under the dark sky, Tianlei surged and the wind howled. Countless voids were collapsing. Large expanses of blackness spread out like a giant beast, about to devour everything. The enchantment of the Peach Blossom Cove was trembling violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. A bright and resplendent silver-red god domain surged like a clear river. A woman, with her shoulders and back straight, hovered in midair. With a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right, she looked like a god of war. Yan Qing was slightly shocked and murmured in a low voice, "We still don't know who exactly needs reinforcements." Rumble! A bright bolt of heavenly lightning struck down with a loud crash. Chu Luo looked up with a cold gaze. She had already shifted her position and was extremely far away from Lan Qingfeng. However, Majian sect was chasing after her relentlessly. They had already controlled the blood sacrifice array and lured Tunlei here. The wind howled in her ears. Voids were collapsing in all directions. In the distance, the enchantment of the Peach Blossom Cove was on the verge of collapsing. Chu Luo felt as if there were countless forces around her that were crazily pulling at her. It was as if they wanted to tear her apart. With a thought, a golden armor quickly covered her body. "Have you had enough fun?" Her gaze was cold as she scolded in a deep voice. Even if Mo Yun and the others were not annoyed, she had already lost her patience. Hearing her voice, Mo Yun was stunned at first. Then, his face turned cold as he sneered. "But don't you want to escape? Even if you want to escape, you will need to expend a lot of energy and energy." Chu Luo clearly wanted to play along with him until the end. However, in the blink of an eye, she stopped and asked this question. It was likely that she could not take it anymore. There was a distance between the two of them. However, Chu Luo could still hear the arrogance in Mo Yun's voice. She could not help but sneer in her heart. "That's right. I don't want to waste any more time with you." If the Peach Blossom Cove collapsed, even she did not dare to predict the situation. Therefore, she could not afford to waste any more time with these people. Mo Yun raised his voice. "It's too late. Shengguan Yu, Rong Xiu. If you had knelt down and admitted defeat at the beginning, we might have left your bodies intact. However, that's impossible now." Majian sect had paid a huge price to hunt down these two people. Although Mo Yun did not care about the lives of these people, he cared about Majian sect's reputation. He had to avenge the slaps from these two people. Chu Liuyue's lips suddenly curled up into a smile. Her smile was extremely cold and did not reach her eyes. "Very good. I think so too." As she spoke, she slowly tightened her grip on Scarlet Heaven Sword. Rong Xiu, who had been following not far away, saw her expression and suddenly had a thought. 13 asked uneasily. "Big brother, why do I feel that Master is planning to do something?" Yujio nodded and whispered. "I think so too." They had followed Chu Luo for many years and knew her temperament very well. Master rarely revealed such an expression. Sin Yi suddenly said, "Everyone, get ready. Pay attention to your safety. If necessary, retreat at any time." The flesh on 13's cheeks trembled slightly. "Big brother, aren't you too serious? Just listening to it was really scary, okay?" Sin Yi glanced at him indifferently. "I almost forgot. You can stay here safely. After all, you still have that small space. If Master needs anything, you must not be a burden. Do you understand?" This was not a question, but an order. 13's face immediately fell. He did not forget. He had always remembered it. "Oh." 13 struggled to ask. "Big brother, Do you mean you really want Master to do it himself? I think those people from Black Sword sect are not easy to deal with. Shi Fang sighed and patted him on the shoulder. Child, you're still young after all. In a while, you will know that the one who is really difficult to deal with is not Black Sword sect, but our Master. When Master is about to flip out, don't hesitate. Don't hesitate. Just retreat. Retreat early to ensure your safety. 13 nodded as if he understood. If even Brother 10 said so, then, perhaps, he could be at ease? At this moment, Tianlei had already struck down heavily. Chu Luiwen narrowed her eyes, then tapped her toes and went straight for Tianlei. At the same time, a sword aura slashed down horizontally. Scarlet Heaven Sword. A bright rainbow light cut through all obstacles. Luo Yen and the others, who were watching from afar, were slightly shocked when they saw this scene. She actually wants to take the risk? Even Her Eminence has to be careful when dealing with the power of Tianlei. Does she want to die? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1900. The second layer of the blood sacrifice formation had been activated. Other than expanding the range of its attack, the Tianlei it summoned had also become stronger. This was also why they had initially wanted to join the fight, but in the end, they chose to stay where they were and observe. Who knew if Chu Luiyue and the rest would be killed by this Tianlei? However, Chu Luiyue's actions had exceeded their expectations. Luo Yen placed his hands behind his back and did not speak. He had personally witnessed the combat strength Chu Luiyue had displayed in the god-slaying mound. He knew very well that this woman would never do something she was not confident in. If she dared to do this, it meant that she was confident. However, after all, the Black Sword sect was determined to kill her this time. They had already used all their strength and held nothing back. Could she really handle it? Besides, there was also Rong Xiu. Luo Yan's gaze turned slightly and looked at the tall white figure beside Chu Luiyue. Rong Xiu did not move. It seemed that he was going to let her do whatever she wanted. Luo Yan felt inexplicably uneasy. Even at a time like this, these people were still so calm. Could it be that they still had some trump cards that they had not revealed? Let's watch first, Luo Yan ordered. The elders nodded when they heard this. Perhaps this battle would end very soon. Boom! An earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out. The terrifying sword Qi and Tianlei's power fiercely collided. Streaks of silver-white energy spread out in all directions. Chu Luiyue's figure had long been swallowed by the dazzling light. Mo Yun sneered and spat out a mouthful of blood. You overestimate yourself. He knew that Chu Luiyue might have some ability, but the second layer of the blood sacrifice formation had been activated, and its power was shocking. Even if she had great ability, she would not be able to escape death this time. After killing Chu Luiyue, the next one would be Rong Xiu. If he could kill both of them here, then from now on, not only would he be able to make up for his mistakes in front of the sect master, he would also be rewarded handsomely. This thought made Mo Yun faintly excited in his heart. He did not control Lan Qingfeng's matter well. The entire Peach Blossom dock was in an uproar. This was almost a capital offense. Only Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue could save him from this hopeless situation. Therefore, he decided to bet the entire Ink Sword sect. No matter how many casualties there were, as long as he could achieve the result he wanted, nothing else mattered. However, just as Mo Yun was waiting for Chu Luiyue to die, a figure suddenly flew out from the lightning that filled the sky. Her figure was tall and slender. It was Chu Luiyue. A sword aura shot up into the sky and forcefully split the ball of flickering white light in half. How is this possible? Mo Yun suddenly opened his eyes wide, his eyes filled with horror. The smugness that had just crept up from the corners of his eyes completely froze. He looked extremely embarrassed. However, he couldn't care less right now. There was only one thought left in his mind. Chu Luiyue actually split the Tianlei in half? Isn't she a high deity? How can she have such powerful combat power? However, before he could figure it out, he saw the figure again moving against the lightning. She went straight for the rolling dark clouds that almost overturned half the sky. Countless people gasped in shock. There were still several bolts of heavenly lightning accumulated in the clouds. Wasn't she courting death by going there? In the eyes of ordinary people, Chu Luiwei was simply tired of living by doing this. Who could survive if they rushed into the sea of lightning? However, Mo Yun looked at the figure from afar. Not only did he not heave a sigh of relief, but he also became more nervous. Ever since they decided to kill the two of them, Chu Luiwei's series of actions had far exceeded their expectations. It was shocking. However, every time they thought that she was going to die, she always managed to survive. This time, would she also? As Mo Yun was thinking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Then, he looked over and saw a bolt of heavenly lightning falling from the sky. Boom! A huge sound spread far and wide, almost deafening. Heavenly lightning striking down was originally not something shocking. But the key point was that this bolt of heavenly lightning was actually flying towards Mo Yun and the rest. When he first saw it, Mo Yun was still in disbelief. It was only when the Tianlei rapidly approached and the terrifying pressure crushed the void inch by inch that the people of Majian sect finally realized the danger. I don't know what method Chu Luiwei used, but she actually made the lightning turn around and attack us. Mo Yun's heart was filled with shock and disbelief, and it quickly turned into anger and shock. It was like seeing a ghost. They were the ones who summoned the Tianlei. Why did it attack them in the end? What did Chu Luiwei do? Quick! Activate the blood sacrifice array's defense. Mo Yun hurriedly urged. The Tianlei's strength was shocking. If he was at his peak, it would not be a problem. However, the blood sacrifice array consumed a lot of force and mental energy. After the series of torment earlier, he could no longer unleash his full strength. The only way was to activate the blood sacrifice array. However, just as he finished speaking, a painful groan was heard. This sound was short and hurried. It only appeared for a moment and disappeared very quickly. Mo Yun's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately turned back to look. Beside the blood sacrifice array, one of the Majian sect guards spat out a mouthful of blood due to exhaustion and collapsed. However, before he hit the ground, a surge of energy suddenly surged out of the blood sacrifice array and swallowed him. That person felt that something was wrong and immediately tried to break free and escape. However, all the energy in his body was already exhausted. He did not even have the strength to lift his arms. How could he escape from the blood sacrifice array? In the blink of an eye, his figure completely disappeared. Everyone fell silent. Their eyes were filled with panic. They were very clear that this person's outcome would be exactly the same as Mo Lin's. At this moment, a slight cracking sound could be heard from the blood sacrifice array. Mo Yun immediately focused his eyes and looked over, only to see that a crack had suddenly appeared on the huge blood sacrifice array. His heart sank. The blood sacrifice array's energy was not enough. To maintain the blood sacrifice array's operation, it required an endless supply of energy. The people present had basically exhausted all of their origin power after this period of torment. They were just barely holding on at the moment. Now that one person had suddenly died, the entire blood sacrifice array would be affected. Why aren't they here yet? Mo Yun could not help but scold angrily. Before he came, he had already sent out the summons. Logically speaking, the people in charge of the Majian sect's reinforcements should have arrived by now. However, there was not a single person. Mo Yun looked in the direction of the city. It was empty, and there was no movement. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind. His pupils shrank. Something had happened to the Majian sect. Digression, not in the right state, staring at the computer for a few hours without writing. The 4th chapter is estimated to be at 7 o'clock, and the 5th chapter might be in arrears. Sorry everyone, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1901. Black Sword Sect had always been strict with their rules. Once they received an order, they would not disobey it for no reason. Now that so much time had passed, not a single person had arrived. It was certain that something had happened in the city. Oh Yun's chest seemed to be burning fiercely. He clenched his fists tightly, almost grinding his teeth to pieces. Who would attack Black Sword Sect at this time? It was obvious who it was. He suddenly turned around and looked at Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue. As if sensing his gaze, Rong Xiu, who had been looking at Chu Luiyue, suddenly looked over. The two of them looked at each other from a distance. With just one look, Mo Yun saw the undisguised sarcasm and indifference in Rong Xiu's deep eyes. Mo Yun's heart seemed to have been hit by something. It was them. In that moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Black Sword Sect had many people and their strength was not weak. Even if a portion of them had died, the remaining people's combined battle power was still considerable. No matter what, it should not be that no one came. This could only prove the entire Black Sword Sect was probably in trouble now. But how did Rong Xiu do it? In the entire Peach Blossom Dock, Black Sword Sect dominated. Even the Yu family could not be compared to them. There was no reason for Black Sword Sect to lose. Mo Yun could not figure it out. He had always thought that Black Sword Sect had half of the Peach Blossom Dock under their control. But he did not expect such a thing to happen at such a crucial time. If no one came to help, then this blood sacrifice array would not be able to last much longer. Just as Mo Yun was thinking about this, another guard was drawn into the blood sacrifice array because he had overdrawn his strength and could not hold on any longer. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a pile of bones. The power of the blood sacrifice array started to become disordered. Mo Yun started to worry. If this goes on, we won't be able to survive even before Chu Luiyue is killed. At this moment, he hated Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue to the core. These two people were truly sinister and cunning to the extreme. Now that he thought about it, he realized that something was amiss. Even Chu Luiyue's escape out of the city from the start was part of her plan. However, it was clearly too late to think about this now. Rumble. Another Tenlei came crashing down, heading straight for the Black Sword Sect disciples. Is that Chu Luiyue really a freak? When the elders of the Nan family saw this, their expressions became shocked and solemn. She thought that Chu Luiyue was dead for sure, but now, not only was she fine, she even killed her opponent? He had never seen anyone who could control Tianlei with such ease. Not even gods like them could do that. Luo Yan frowned. He had expected that Chu Luiyue would not admit defeat so easily, but the scene before him still surprised him. In this battle with the Black Sword Sect, it was hard to say who would win and who would lose. Right at this moment, a huge roar suddenly came from the horizon. Between heaven and earth, endless energy suddenly surged as if it was boiling. Not good. The barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove has collapsed. One of the elders exclaimed in surprise. In the distance, the enchantment that was glowing faintly in the skies suddenly shattered. The space started to compress. The energy of heaven and earth started to riot. Luo Yan made a prompt decision: retreat. There were plenty of chances to kill Chu Luiyue, but if she died here today, everything would be gone. Almost at the same time, a large patch of black suddenly appeared in the sky. It was a black hole that was formed when space collapsed. The ground shook violently. The undulating mountain range started to collapse. Countless cracks spread across the ground, and ravines appeared on the ground. For a moment, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in, as if it was the end of the world. Digression, I owe you, I'll make up for it later. I'll go straighten out my thoughts and plan. Love you mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.